Hello and welcome in a new episode preparing you for the PMP exam. I'm your instructor Nader Omran. In this episode we will talk about the process of creating the work breakdown structure, WBS. At the end of this episode you will be able to describe what is code of account and what is a work package, effectively decompose project deliverable and project work, and create a work breakdown structure with its supporting dictionary. Create work breakdown structure. Create WBS process is the fourth process in the scope management knowledge area. We started the scope management with creating the scope management plan. Then collected the requirements and then defined the scope. Now we will create the work breakdown structure, WBS. Here we are going to organize the whole scope of the project stated in the project scope statement in a visual structured vision of the end result. In this process we are subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components, where the lowest level of the WBS components is the planned work, also called work packages. And these work packages are decomposed again into scheduled activities in time management processes. Now let's see what we need to create the WBS. Input. The first input is the scope management plan. The scope management plan tells us how to create the WBS using the detailed project scope statement and how it will be maintained and approved. Now guess what is the second input to create the WBS?
The project scope statement.
Correct. The project scope statement describes the work that will be performed and the work that is excluded. Also contains description of specific internal or external constraints and assumptions, which may affect the execution of the project. The third input is requirement documentation. Because it contains the detailed requirements, which can help us understanding what needs to be produced at the end of the project and what needs to be done to achieve this. We will need also the enterprise environmental factors, such as industry standards, specific WBS standards relevant to the nature of the project. And from the organizational process assets, we have to check policies, procedures and templates for the WBS, also project files and lessons learned from previous projects. Now let's jump to the tools and technique. Tools and techniques. The major work by creating the work breakdown structure is decomposition.
But what is the meaning of decomposition?
It is a technique used to subdivide the project scope and project deliverables into smaller, more manageable parts. The lowest level of this dividing called work packages. The work package is the work defined at the lowest level of the WBS, for which cost and duration can be estimated and managed. You start decomposing the total project work by identifying and analyzing the deliverables and related work, structuring and organizing the WBS, decomposing the upper WBS levels into detailed lower level components, developing and assigning identification codes to the WBS component, verifying that the degree of decomposition of the deliverables is appropriate. The level of decomposition depends on the degree of control needed to effectively manage the project. But the level of work packages are detailed depends on the size and complexity of the project. Expert judgment. You will need such judgment and expertise from the experts to analyze the information needed by decomposing the project deliverables down into smaller components, and to clear differences in opinion on how to best decompose the overall scope of the project to create an effective work breakdown structure. This level of expertise is provided by groups or individuals with relevant knowledge or experience with similar projects or industry. You may also use predefined templates set by experts that provide guidance on how to effectively decompose well-known deliverables. Such templates are industry or discipline specific or may come from similar projects. You, as a project manager with the project team, determine the final decomposition of the project scope into smaller work packages that will be used to effectively manage the work of the project.
How can I perform a work breakdown structure?
There are some known methods to structure the WBS, such as the top-down structure. Also, a bottom-up approach can be used during the integration of subcomponents, or you can use the organization-specific guidelines and WBS templates from the organization process assets. Each organization might have its own form of WBS structure, such as structure uses the phases as the second level of decomposition, and the product and project deliverables as the third level. And other structures use the major deliverables as the second level of decomposition. Also, there are structures which incorporate subcomponents like outsourced work, which may be developed by external organization, such as contracted work to produce a part of your deliverable. In fact, when we decompose the upper level of the WPS, we subdivide the work of the deliverable and subcomponents into its most fundamental elements. The WPS could be developed as an Excel sheet or in form of organizational chart or other methods, but it should be as a hierarchical breakdown. The WPS component represents verifiable products, service, or result.
How can I verify that my decomposition is appropriate enough?
Then you have to determine that the lower level of the WPS components are necessary and sufficient for completing the corresponding higher level deliverables. There is a general rule states that the lowest level of the WPS, or better to say, the work packages, should be not less than 8 work hours and not more than 80 work hours. Different deliverables have different levels of decomposition. Sometimes the work of some deliverables needs to be decomposed only to the next level, while others need more levels of decomposition. In fact, decomposing to greater level of details gives us the ability to better plan, manage, and control the work. But however, excessive decomposition can lead to non-productive management effort or inefficient use of resources or decreased efficiency in performing the work. We may hear about rolling wave planning. Those are projects or deliverables that will be accomplished far into the future, and creating the WPS may not be possible. Here, the project management team waits until the deliverable is approved, then start to develop the detailed work breakdown structure. This is the rolling wave planning.
What about the 100% rule?
100% rule means that the WPS contains 100% of the project scope and contains all deliverables and the project work, including the project management work. Let's move to the output. Output. We have two outputs from the process of creating the WPS. The first is the scope baseline. The scope baseline is the combination of three documents: project scope statement, work breakdown structure WBS, and WBS dictionary. The approved version of the project scope statement, which we created in the define scope process, includes the description of the project scope and major deliverables, as well as assumptions and constraints. The work breakdown structure and the WBS dictionary, which we created in this process, to complete the scope baseline and get it approved. And from now on, any further changes to the scope baseline must be formally approved. The work breakdown structure is a presentation or a hierarchical view of the whole work in the project, divided into small and smaller parts of work, which make it more and more detailed work packages. And then pointing each work package to a control account and creating a unique identifier for each work part from the code of account. The WPS provides an easy hierarchical summation of costs, schedule, and resource information. These control accounts are used as management control points, where scope, budget, and schedule are compared to the current earned value to produce the performance measurements. Each control account may include one or more work packages, but each of the work packages should be associated with only one control account. Also, a control account may include one or more planning packages.
What are planning packages?
Well, the BIMBOK guide defines as follows: a work breakdown structure component below the control account with known work content but without detailed schedule activities. That means a planning package includes known future work until the work could be detailed and broken into work packages as we know it. So that was all about the WBS, the work breakdown structure.
But what is the WBS dictionary?
The WBS dictionary is a document, most of the time as an Excel sheet. It lists all WBS components with detailed information in regards to deliverable activities and scheduling. This document is to support the WBS.
How WBS dictionary looks like?
It could include the following information: code of account identifier, description of work, assumptions and constraints, performing organization, schedule milestones, associated schedule activities, resources required, cost estimates, quality requirements, acceptance criteria, technical references, and agreement information. In fact, you can add more columns as more information needed. The second output is project documents updates, which is an updating activity.
Which documents should be updated after creating the WBS?
The major one is the requirement documentation, because the WPS process may cause a change in the requirements, which should be approved and updated in the requirement documentation. Here we arrived to my favorite slide where we visualize the information. We had 5 inputs to create the WBS. The scope management plan, it's an output from the plan scope management process. And the project scope statement from the process of defining the scope. The requirements documentation from the collect requirements process. Also the enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets, such as policies, procedures, and templates. After performing the tools and techniques, we came out with the scope baseline and project document updates. The scope baseline will be needed in 7 other processes. In develop project management plan process, because it is a part of the project management plan. We need it also in the define activities process. Estimate costs process. And determine budget. Also, we will need it in identify risks and perform qualitative risk analysis processes. And we will need it to validate the scope in monitoring and controlling process group. The second output is an updating activity for the project document, such as requirement documentation. We arrived to the end of this episode. Now we are able to describe what is code of account and what is a work package. Effectively decompose project deliverable and project work. And create a work breakdown structure with its supporting dictionary. I hope it was informative for you, and thank you for watching.